So I'm writing this secret history of globalization, and I discover, to my surprise, that tens of thousands of Asians end up in colonial Mexico. And in this crowd are several hundred ronin, independent Japanese samurai, who are brought over to guard silver shipments in colonial Mexico against bandits. And the bandits are largely escaped African slaves. And I wanted to flesh this out, and so I was imagining them wielding their swords and katanas. And suddenly it occurred to me, I don't know what kind of weapons they have, so I called Neil.
So I said, now that you mention it, I don't know. I mean, katana sounds good, but I don't really know. But I know the guy who knows.
I knew that the Japanese were filtering into the Philippines at that time. Warriors who attached different trading ships, and some of them jumped ship in Manila or left for other reasons, and they settled in different places in both Southeast Asia and Philippines. So as one thing led to another, I started thinking something that Neil and Charles had already been thinking, my God, what a novel this would be.
The whole idea was just so compelling that it was just obviously seemed like a fiction project and one that was particularly well suited for a graphic novel kind of treatment. Mark Teppo has been involved with the Foreworld project from the very beginning. As we started actually trying to reduce our enthusiastic ideas into a script that could be made into a graphic novel, it just became blindingly obvious that we needed somebody of his talents to join our quartet of writers.
A number of times over the last couple of years, as Neil and I have been working on Foreworld, we would have these opportunities where we'd be standing around waiting for something to happen. And invariably in those moments, Neil would muse for a moment and then launch into a little story. And this one afternoon, he launched into the story about Ronin in New Mexico and the Maroons. When he got done, he paused, at which point my job was simply to say, well, let's get working on that.
The great luck is that we got Robert Salmon, who's this absolutely wonderful artist.
One day I got an email describing, just in brief, a few words about the project and who was involved. And I had to double take on that email and just looked at it. This is crazy. I have to do this.
And this is a bunch of weird stuff. It's stuff that, obviously he's never drawn before. And instead of kind of being daunted, he's really said, okay, let's go for it.
As a layman to this era and these themes, I made a few mistakes, like knife in the wrong hand or sword edged up or down. And just to be safe, I knew I was going to mess up. So the guys don't know this, but I can show it now. The cover for issue number 2, Kitazume, doesn't have an arrow notch because I somehow knew I was going to get this wrong. And I relied on doing it on the computer, but the first draft, of course, was wrong, so I had to change it.
So it becomes a story that moves around the world in a more fluid way than you would expect for something that happened so long ago. We've got flashbacks to Satsuma. We've got Manila, which is an amazingly complicated location at this time. We've got Acapulco. We've got the mountains in the spine of Mexico. We've got Mexico City. We've got various locations in Africa. And all of these things get pulled together by the stories of these 4 characters.
We really have a really wide-ranging, diverse cast. So you have Kitazume, who's this kind of dissolute, suicidal, independent Japanese samurai.
Luis is a Jesuit, and he's sort of a wily Jesuit. His role in life is to find some purpose for himself that won't necessarily bring his family disgrace, but at the same time, his family has sort of forgotten him.
You have Irgen, who's a Manchu princess who's on a kind of a secret diplomatic mission.
What's been exciting writing about Irgen from our perspective is not following all the cliches, not having her hook up with somebody, having her also not just somebody who needs rescuing. She may be the scariest character of the whole bunch. And her particular weapon is this jin, which was actually a scholar's sword, and it was used in a fencing style and also a slashing style.
Katumbuke. He's a high-ranking figure in an African military unit. He gets captured, is marched out to the coast with a bunch of other guys like him, and ends up on a slave ship headed for the New World.
You had this enormous group of individuals in New Mexico who were badasses, and who very quickly got tired of being slaves and who would just sort of head for the hills and start their own little communities and little kingdoms.
Charles and I actually went through and whacked out about half of the dialogue. because the art had done such a good job of conveying what was going on that we realized that we had kind of overwritten it. It's our tendency as writers to try to say things with words, but Robert figured out a way to say the same things more beautifully with art.
There's just so many opportunities for exciting side stories, all sorts of plots of encounters between people from what we would assume utterly alien cultures, but they were interrelating in a way that has not been approached until modern times.